Proverbs 4, we're starting in verse 1. It says this. It says, my children, oh, it's back up. Good. My children, listen when your father corrects you. Pay attention and learn good judgment. I am giving you good guidance. Don't turn away from my instructions, for I too was once my father's son and tenderly loved as my mother's only child. For those of you that don't know the story in the background between David and Solomon, David actually I can't remember if it's Kings or Chronicles, one of them. They blend together for me. David actually had an opportunity to do what he was supposed to do as king and go out to war like he had been for his entire life. And there was a verse, I think it's like First Chronicles something like, but it's like verse 1. And it says that in a time where kings went out to war, David stayed home. In a time when kings went out to war, David stayed home, and he sent out Joab instead. The kings were supposed to do that. So when David was outside of where he was supposed to be, he went out onto his porch kind of area and looked out and saw a woman bathing on a roof. And asked somebody, hey, who is this? And he said, oh, that's Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. Uriah is actually one of David's mighty men. And David said, go get her for me. That's what happened when David was away from his assignment. So David, what ends up happening, just short version, is that David actually gets Bathsheba pregnant. David, through some trickery, I guess you could say, ends up having Uriah killed, Bathsheba's husband, and then David marries Bathsheba. This is the interaction of what's going on here. The baby that they had together, that first one, dies, and then the next child they have is Solomon, the next king. Do you hear how God takes these really kind of seemingly crazy earthly things and has something amazing come out of it? So when he says here, when Solomon's saying, I too was my father's son, tenderly loved as my mother's only child, that's what we're talking about. This is Bathsheba's only child because they lost the first one. Solomon's about to disclose to his kids what David taught him, and he wants to make sure that his kids are paying attention. Dads, we all know about that, right? Hey, kids, look at me. Look at me, right? I need to make sure that you're listening. I'm going to tell you something really important now. I need to make sure that you're actually hearing me. That's what he's talking about here. Pay attention. Learn good judgment. I'm giving you good guidance. It continues on. Verse 4. My father taught me. So again, this is Solomon talking to his kids, but Solomon saying, my father, King David, taught me this. Take my words to heart, follow my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom. Develop good judgment. Don't forget my words or turn away from them. Do not turn back on wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will guard you. Getting wisdom is the wisest thing you can do. And whatever else you do, develop good judgment. If you prize wisdom, she will make you great. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will place a lovely wreath on your head, and she will present you with a beautiful crown. These are David's words to Solomon, and also Solomon's words to his kids. What is the crux of this whole thing? Hey, guys, get wisdom. Get wisdom. That's it. It's not some grandiose thing here, right? 1-point sermon. Get wisdom. In fact, we know that David was actually successful at relaying that information to Solomon because of 1 Kings 3. 1 Kings 3, we know that Solomon has this encounter with God. Solomon has this crazy encounter with God in which God basically gives him a blank check and says, tell me what you want and I'll give it to you. 1 Kings chapter 3, starting in verse 5, it says this: that night the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream. Did you hear that? Appeared to Solomon in a dream. Yep. And God said, "What do you want? Ask, and I will give it to you." Solomon replied, "You showed great and faithful love to your servant, my father David, because he was honest and true and faithful to you. And you have continued to show this great and faithful love to him today by giving him a son to sit on your throne, on his throne. Now, O God, you have made me king instead of my father David, but I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous that they can't be counted. Here's the request: give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. For who by himself is able to govern this great people of yours?" Let's stop there for a second. God gave Solomon a blank check. Tell me what you want, anything you want, and I'll give it to you. And what did Solomon ask for? He asked for an understanding heart. Other translations say a discerning heart, to be able to judge between good and evil, to be able to determine who's right and what the just thing is. He asked for an understanding heart. That's important because verse 10 says the Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom. Well, he didn't exactly ask for wisdom. He asked for an understanding heart. And God said, "Man, that was awesome. You asked for wisdom." Now, can you imagine Solomon hearing that say, I said understanding heart? God, though, knows what he's talking about and saying what you need then is wisdom. You want an understanding heart? You need wisdom. In fact, if you need anything, you need wisdom. The Lord was pleased that Solomon asked for wisdom. Verse 11, so God replied, "Because you have asked for wisdom in governing my people with justice and have not asked for long life or wealth or the death of your enemies." How many of us would have said one of those three, right? I want to live forever. I want riches beyond measure. I want, my enemies to not be able to affect me. Most of us probably would say one of those three things, right? But he says, because you asked for wisdom and not those three things, I will give you what you asked for. I will give you a wise and understanding heart, such as no one else has ever had or will ever have. And I will also give you what you didn't ask for. So here's your blank check filled out for wisdom. Here it is. You got it. And I'm also going to write you another one for all the other stuff. I will also give you what you did not ask for, riches and fame. No other king in all the world will be compared to you for the rest of your life. And if you follow me and obey my decrees and commands as your father David did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon woke up and realized it was a dream. See, a lot of times we hear about this encounter. We remember Solomon asked for wisdom and he got wisdom. We remember that. But a lot of times we forget that it happened in a dream. Solomon, the biggest point of Solomon's life, the thing that he is probably most famously remembered for, his wisdom and where he got that from, came when he was unconscious. He was asleep. God trusted Solomon while he was sleeping to get the right answer. I need wisdom. I believe that God was able to give him that opportunity because Solomon was uniquely prepared to answer that question. Because David had taught him from the time he was little, above all else, get wisdom. Above everything, get wisdom. It was pounded into Solomon's head throughout his entire life. David would talk to him over and over again. Get wisdom, get wisdom, get wisdom. So that when God came and said, "Here's your blank check," what else was Solomon going to say? There was nothing else. It had to be wisdom. He had been taught that over and over and over again. And I think God gave him that opportunity in that dream on purpose because he was prepared to answer it correctly. Let's go back to Proverbs 4. Proverbs 4, again, starting in verse 10 now. It says, my child, listen to me and do as I say, and you will have a long, good life. I will teach you wisdom's ways. Remember, this is David talking to Solomon, and Solomon relaying it to his kids. I will teach you wisdom's ways and lead you in straight paths. When you walk, you won't be held back. When you run, you won't stumble. Take hold of my instructions and don't let them go. Guard them, for they are the key of life. We have to learn the ways of wisdom. The ways of wisdom are the key of life. You want to know what unlocks all these mysterious doors that you want to be able to go through? What's holding you back? Everything you want to be able to do that? It's wisdom. You have to get wisdom because wisdom is the key that opens them. Continuing in verse 14. Do not do as the wicked do. Do not follow the path of evildoers. Don't even think about it. Don't go that way. Turn away and keep moving, for evil people can't sleep until they've done their evil deed for the day. I like how that translation says that. They can't rest until they've caused someone to stumble. They eat the food of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. The way of the righteous is like the first gleam of dawn, which shines ever brighter until the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like total darkness. They have no idea what they're stumbling over. See, a lot of people are concerned about the rules and laws, and that's kind of what we're talking about here in this idea of wickedness, right? Wickedness versus righteousness. And a lot of people see it that way. That this is a rules-based thing versus a righteous thing. And it kind of says that, but I don't think it's exactly right. I think what they're saying here in verses 14 through 19 is this is what happens when you don't pursue wisdom. Don't do as the wicked do. Don't follow the path of evildoers. If you don't pursue wisdom, this is what's going to happen. You're going to, the evil people can't sleep until they've done their evil deed. They can't rest until they cause people to stumble. All those things. That's what happens when you don't pursue what wisdom is. Not following wisdom is following those paths of evildoers. Proverbs 2:12 says it this way: wisdom will save you from evil people, from those whose words are twisted. Continuing on in Proverbs 4, we're in verse 20. It says, my child, again, just remember who's talking here. My child, pay attention to what I say. Listen carefully to my words and don't lose sight of them. Let them penetrate deep into your heart, for they bring life to those who find them and healing to the whole body. Let that pursuit of wisdom penetrate your heart. Why? Because it gives life and healing. Wisdom brings life and healing. In fact, James 1:5-8 says this. It says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking, but when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Remember, the whole idea is to get wisdom. How do we do it? It says, if you need wisdom, ask God for it. Kind of obvious, right? If you need wisdom, ask. He will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver. For a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything that they do. If you want wisdom, ask God for it. How else do we get it? Proverbs 9 says the fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. If you want wisdom, the fear of the Lord. That's what it is. This isn't be afraid of God. This is a respect of who God is. Going back to Proverbs 4, verse 23, it says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. This was probably the most impactful thing for me as I was studying this chapter, because guarding your heart above all else doesn't mean like that blood pumping muscle in your body. Okay, we think that guard your heart. Okay, well, my ribs guard my heart, my skin guards my heart. Like that blood pumping muscle in your body. That's not what it's actually talking about. In fact, the actual words there, that it's heart in the Blue Letter Bible, it says that word means your soul, your knowledge, your understanding. It's the seat of your appetites, your passions, and your courage. So when it says guard your heart, it's saying guard your soul, guard your appetites, guard your understanding, guard your courage. So again, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. How many of you know that your soul, your knowledge, your understanding, your appetite, your passions, your courage, that really does control where you go and what you do? If you have a desire to do something, but not the courage to do something, your courage will take you away from what you were actually called to do. Proverbs 4 continues in verse 24, avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. Avoiding perverse talk and staying away from that. Again, the Blue Letter Bible shows us that what this actually means is it's crooked and deviated speech that goes awry from what truth is. So let me kind of say this a different way, maybe. It says avoid perverse talk, stay away from corrupt speech. What it's really saying is stay away from things that deviate away from what's true. Stay away from things that are taking you away from what is true. I'm assuming that we know that John 14:6 says this. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. That second one, I am the truth, think about it in that context. What is crooked and deviated speech? It is speech that takes you away from what is true. If Jesus is the truth, then what is that? It takes you away from him. It's speech that takes you away from Jesus. Proverbs 4 ends this way in verse 25. It says, look straight ahead. Fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out the straight path for your feet. Stay on the straight path. Don't get sidetracked. Love that line. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. We have to focus on what's in front of us. We have to make a straight path for where God is telling us to go, and don't get sidetracked. We need to set our mind on wisdom and obtaining wisdom, and don't get off that path. Psalm 119, 105 said, your word is the lamp to guide my feet and a light to my path, right? The whole point of this is to get wisdom. And this Father's Day, I want to actually stand here as a father myself and say that my Father in heaven is teaching me to seek wisdom above all else. Much like David did to Solomon. I've had this thought over and over again throughout my life to make sure that you're obtaining wisdom. Get wisdom above everything. Get wisdom. Some people, though, will say, well, yeah, I get it. But aren't you supposed to be pursuing Jesus like that? Or shouldn't it be get Jesus above all else? Go for Jesus above everything? Wisdom seems like you're striving after something that's not him. And I understand. But I want you to look at 1 Corinthians 1:24. If you can put that up, Will. 1 Corinthians 1:24 should be the last one. It says, Christ is the power of God. Should be the very last slide. Okay. Look it up. 1 Corinthians 1:24, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. Let me say it again. Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. So when we say get wisdom, what are we saying? We're saying get Jesus. When we say that Solomon was the wisest man to ever live, well, that's true only because wisdom is Jesus. Remember that Jesus is the Word from the beginning, right? He was the wisdom of God that created the universe. Jesus is that wisdom that we're talking about. When we're pursuing wisdom, we are pursuing Jesus. When we pursue Jesus, we are pursuing wisdom. In fact, seeking wisdom is the same thing as seeking Jesus. Seeking wisdom is seeking the presence of God. Seeking wisdom is seeking the power of Holy Spirit inside of us. We have to seek wisdom above everything. And I want to relay, just as Solomon did, what the Father is telling me to you. The Father is telling me to seek wisdom above everything. And I want to let you know that that is our call, to seek wisdom. It is one of the easiest and one of the hardest things to do. Because it's very clear, again, just a reminder from James. James says, if you want wisdom, ask for it. God will give it to you. That's easy. Ask, and he'll give it to you. But the second part of that verse says, but don't waver. Don't waver. That's the part that's more difficult. Well, I don't feel like I have it. I don't feel like it's really changed. I don't want it. Don't waver. I want to have you guys stand. I want to pray for you. Obviously, I mean, there's a logical thing to pray for.